Okay, time to cover another tool used for website enumeration, which is called derb. Now, this will be a rather quick video because this tool is not that big, but it is really useful. We use derb to discover hidden directories on a website. Or you can also consider it as a tool that is used to brute force directory names and see whether certain directory names exist on a website or if they don't. Now, as with almost any other tool that we use, we can run derb straight from our terminal. And to open the help menu, we can just type derb, which will give us all of the available options that we can use with this tool. But since website enumeration is not our main part of the course, we really want to get straight into bug hunting. We'll just cover the basic of this tool, which you probably will always use like this. However, if you do want, check out all of the other options to see what else you can do with the derb tool. But for this video, what we want to do is we want to discover some hidden directories. And to do that, all we have to type is derb and then HTTP and then the IP address of our OWASP virtual machine. If we type it like this and press enter, it will start running without specifying any other option whatsoever. And you can see all of these output that we get are discovered directories on the website. Right here we can see how many generated words did derb create, and all of these words will be tested out as a possible directory on this website. Straight away we managed to find some of them. As we can see, we have /assets on the website, we have CGI bin, we have cross domain, and if you're wondering what is this in the brackets, this simply just gives us the code, and as we already know, code 200 means that the page loaded successfully, which also means that the page exists on that website. If it were to get some other code resulting in an error, then the tool would probably determine that that page does not exist, so it doesn't print it out right here. Okay, so if we go all the way down, we can see that it already discovered a bunch of other directories, and what you would do is you would pretty much go through this and see whether you see anything interesting for us. For example, any administrator directory could possibly be interesting. Of course, if you find something that has passwords inside of its name, that would also be interesting because you never know what the website developer put there. Maybe they forgot to remove a certain directory from the test phase and they left it right there, which could possibly have perhaps the source code or some additional information such as users, or perhaps they made the entire database public. I mean, you never know. Even though it is rare, it can and it does happen sometimes. So nonetheless, let's see to which point did this tool get. And it's still discovering directories, so I'm just going to stop this because I don't really need it to finish till the end. Instead, I also want to show you another option that you can do with derb. Since if you type a straight command like this, which is just derb and then the IP address over HTTP, it will use its usual list that it always uses. But what you can do is you can specify your own list right after the IP address, so you can do something like user share word lists, and this is the path to word lists in Kali Linux. So it's /user /share and then /word lists. And if you want to see all of the options that you have inside of this word list directory, you can press tab twice fast. And here you will be able to see all of these subdirectories to this word list directory. And since we are running derb, let's go to the derb subdirectory. And inside of the derb subdirectory, we have all of these txt files. And all of these txt files are certain lists. Let's go with common.txt, which I do believe is also ran by default, but nonetheless, let us just see how we can use a specified word list of our choice, and all you have to do is press enter. And it will pretty much do the same thing, just with your word list instead. It will try to find all of those directories and it will print out the ones that exist. And if you wanted to, for example, make sure that a certain directory exists, what you can do is you can copy any of these directories. For example, let's go with this one, which is /images. you can go to your Firefox and visit it like this. And we do see that images directory does exist on our OWASP virtual machine. You can do so with any other as well, such as for example phpMyAdmin. Let's copy the link and let's paste it right here. And it also loads the phpMyAdmin login screen. Awesome. All we're left to do is cover two more important tools. In the next video, we will cover Nmap, which will pretty much be just the basics of Nmap because that is a huge tool. It has a bunch of options and we're not getting into details with Nmap. However, we'll cover some of the basics of it in the next video, and then in the next section, we're going to dive deep into a tool called burpsuit. Now, why are we going through all of these previous tools with only basic options, and with burpsuit we're going to go with advanced options? Well, it's pretty simple. Burpsuit is a tool that you will use for bug bounty. Its main purpose is to actually use it for bug bounty. While as all of these tools that we covered by now, you can use if you like, but you don't really have to. It's pretty much your choice. Nonetheless, more about burpsuit in the next section, and let's focus now on Nmap, which we will cover in the next video. See you there. Okay, big tool is ahead of us. It's time we cover Nmap. Now, what is Nmap? Well, Nmap is shortened for Network Mapper, and it's a tool used to pretty much map the network or discover open ports on the target system that you're scanning. With those open ports, we can also discover which services are running on those open ports, and Nmap can go as deep as discovering which version of a service is running on which open port on the target system. Now, Nmap does have some other options as well, but as we did mention in the previous video, we're here to only discuss the basics of Nmap, and if you'd like to dive deeper into Nmap, you can take a look at our Nmap cheat sheet, or you can also learn it from the Nmap manual. We already know how to open the manual. You just type man and then the tool name, and it will open the manual for that tool. However, we are not going to read it right now. We're more interested in running the help menu of Nmap, and this will be a shorter version of what are the possibilities with this tool. As we can see, there are a lot of options that we can run. If you'd like, read through them and see what are the possibilities, but right now we're going to perform the very basic scan with Nmap just to see what output do we get and what does this tool do for us. The very basic scan would be typing the Nmap and then the IP address of our target. And as we can see, it finished in less than a second, and this is the output that we get. We scanned our OWASP virtual machine, and the only output that we get is which ports does our machine have open. And there are quite a few of them. So we have the 22 port open, which is running the service of SSH. We got our website hosted on port 80, since it's running HTTP over there. And as well, we got our website on port 443, which is running HTTPS. But we do also get some other ports open that are running different services, and that is also why Nmap is useful. Perhaps sometimes once you're scanning a website, you will discover other ports that are hosting other services, even though the website might not have bugs itself. Maybe the machine hosting the website has other services that are vulnerable to a different attack. But that is out of the aspect of this course. However, you can use Nmap to determine that, and you will use Nmap a lot if you perform penetration testing. So this very basic scan gave us the output of all of the open ports on Nmap, and it also gave us that it found 991 closed ports. Now, why is that? Well, Nmap by default scans most known 1000 ports, and out of those 1000 ports, 991 were closed, while as these 9 ports are found to be opened. If you want to dive even deeper into these open ports, and perhaps you want to discover a version of a service that is running on this open port, you can run this command, nmap-sv, and then the IP address of your target. In our case, I'm using again OWASP BWA, and if I run it, it will take longer to finish than this scan. However, it should also take about a few seconds. let's wait for it to finish. And this is the output that we get right now. You will notice that it's quite larger than the previous one, since besides getting the same output, which is which ports are open, we also get this column right here that says version. It gave us the version of each service that it is found on open port. For example, if we take a look at SSH running on port 22, we get the exact SSH version that this target machine has, as well as we get the exact Apache version that is being hosted on port 80 for HTTP. And we do see that it does match with the output that we got, if you remember, from our WhatWeb tool. Remember that we got Apache 2.2.14? Well, Nmap gave us the same result, so we can pretty much determine that this is the correct output and that the target machine is indeed running Apache 2.2.14. We also get the versions for other ports as well. So this is pretty useful information. And we can also see that apparently HTTP is being served on these ports as well. So it's not only port 80. We also have HTTP running on port 8080, which is running Apache Tomcat. And we got HTTP being served on port 8081, which is running Jetty. Now this is something that we didn't know before. And now if we go, for example, to our Firefox and we try to visit our OWASP virtual machine on port 8081, so let's type it right here, 8081. Wow, so we do open another web page. This is a web page that we didn't see before, since by default every browser opens a page on port 80, since that is the usual HTTP port. If we wanted to, for example, open a web page on a different port, we need to manually type it like this. And we do open another web page. Awesome. Let's see, what else do we get? So pretty much that would be about it, all of this services version. And another thing that I want to show you that is possible with Nmap is to use something called scripts. Now, Nmap can also try to find vulnerabilities. It can be used as a vulnerability scanner. How can we do that? Well, we can type something like this, nmap --script, then we type vuln, and then the IP address of our target. Now, this will take a little bit longer to finish because it does perform all the scripts that are used for discovering vulnerabilities. And while this is running, let me show you this website called nmap.org, where you can pretty much read anything about Nmap that you like. You can go to this page and you can also find the manual here, read all of the available options with Nmap, read what it is used for in case you're interested in this. Awesome. Let's see if our scan is finishing. We did get some output right here. And by the way, you can check out the percentage of your scan by typing upper arrow, and it will tell you at what percentage is it at. So let's wait for it to finish. Okay, and this did last much longer than I thought. It took quite a few minutes, but it's finally over. And here is all the output that we get. If we scroll all the way up, let's start from the beginning. It's going to run the scripts per port. So it determines first which ports are open. Then for each port, it runs all of the scripts that are used for discovering vulnerabilities. As we can see, for HTTP port 80, it ran first the script HTTP cross-domain policy. Down here, it tells us that the state is vulnerable, so perhaps we found our first vulnerability. Keep in mind that sometimes Nmap does know to give false positives, and I will show you in just a second why. Let's go all the way down. We got CSRF script running right here. It tells us found the following possible CSRF vulnerabilities. So this is not really 100%, it just says that it could be possible on these links. And by the way, if you don't know what these vulnerabilities are, CSRF, XSS, don't worry, those are all the bugs that we will cover once we get to the bug bounty, and trust me, we're getting there quick. Nonetheless, let's just go through this. Here is the HTTP DOM-based XSS, and let's see right here. found the following indications of potential DOM-based XSS. That's interesting. On this page, let's go down here. We got the SQL injection script running. It found the possible SQL injection queries on these links right here. So this is all the links that we would want to test in a real penetration testing attack. Down here we got HTTP stored XSS script, and here it says couldn't find any stored vulnerabilities. And that is false. I assure you that on the page or on OWASP, we will get certain pages that do have HTTP stored XSS. So you can never fully trust what you get from a certain tool. That's why we will be discovering all of our bugs manually and not with tools. So you can scroll all the way down and check out all the other scripts that Nmap ran and what are the results. Or if you don't want to run these type of scans, which you use every single script to discover vulnerabilities, you can, for example, copy a script name, which you can also find in the nmap.org website. You can find all of the scripts that the Nmap has, and you can run a single script by typing nmap --script, then the script name, and then your target IP address. And it will only run this one script. In case you're trying to target just one vulnerability, you can simply just run just one script that discovers that vulnerability and see what the Nmap will tell you. Once again, if I'm not mistaken, this HTTP stored XSS will give us the result that there is no such thing on the OWASP virtual machine. However, we will see later that stored XSS does indeed exist on our OWASP virtual machine. And here is the response. So this is what we get: open ports, and on the HTTP ports, because XSS is a website vulnerability, it tells us that it couldn't find any stored XSS vulnerabilities on both HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, nonetheless, these are some of the basics of Nmap and how you can use Nmap. Now, I strongly recommend that you dive deeper into this tool, and we will be leaving some resources for you to take a look at in order to learn Nmap, since it can be useful not only for website penetration testing, but for penetration testing and ethical hacking in general. This is one of the most important tools that hackers use. Nonetheless, as I mentioned, you will have resources where you can learn more about this tool, and in the next video, right before we get into burpsuit, there is one more tool that we need to cover, which is called Nikto. See you in the next video. Alright, last tool before we get into burpsuit and bug hunting. So, Nikto. What is it? Nikto is a tool that performs comprehensive tests against web servers. It searches for server misconfigurations, it checks for outdated versions of servers, it scans for dangerous files and programs on a web page. It has many useful features that we can read at this page. This is a page on Kali.org website, and it has a Nikto tool description. Under here, we have its features, so we can read through them. It has SSL support, full HTTP proxy support, checks for outdated server components, which we already mentioned. You also have the option to save your reports in different file types. We can go all the way down, identifies installed softwares via headers and files, host authentication with basic and NTLM, subdomain guessing, so it pretty much performs website enumeration and vulnerability assessment all together. However, the most important thing that it gives us is which softwares are outdated. Okay, but we want to see the basic use of it, and if you find this tool useful, feel free to check out all of the other options that you can use with the combination of your scans. And for us, to run the tool help menu, we can open the terminal and we can type Nikto. This will open a small help menu for us, and here we can see some of the options that we can use with this tool. However, for our basic scan, the most important option for us, and the one that we must specify, is the -host option. As we can see, its description says that -host specifies target host or URL. So let's scan our OWASP virtual machine. We're going to type Nikto, -host and then the IP address of your OWASP machine. In my case right now it's 192.168.1.5. If you press enter, it will start the Nikto scan. And Nikto tool is made to perform these scans fast, so they will usually not take more than a couple of minutes at max. So let's wait for this to finish and then we're going to read through some of the information that we got right here. And it's done. It took around 30 seconds and this is the output that we get. At the very beginning we got some target information as well as the server configuration. It tells us which versions is it using, and down here it describes each of those versions and what it managed to find that might be interesting for us. As we can see, let's go from here. The anti-clickjacking X-frame options header is not present. The XSS protection header is not defined, and it gives us a description why this might be useful. As it says, this header can hint to the user agent to protect against some forms of XSS. And XSS is once again the attack that we will cover later. Down here it tells us some of the versions that it is running, pretty much the same output that Nmap tool gave us. We got the Apache 2.2.14 and it tells us that this version appears to be outdated. Current is at least Apache 2.4.37. It tells us pretty much for any plugin that our OWASP has that it appears to be outdated. And what does an outdated mean to a penetration tester? Well, it means probably a bunch of vulnerabilities, because most of the time a certain plugin gets updated and gets a newer version because of a previous bug or a previous vulnerability. If we go all the way down, it tells us that the Python version that it's running appears to be outdated, the Perl version appears to be outdated, pretty much everything is outdated. We get the allowed HTTP methods, which is get, head, post, options, and trace. And down here, that would be pretty much it. It also gives us some output as to which directories might be interesting for us that Nikto managed to discover. For example, this phpMyAdmin is a directory that we already found, and it tells us that this might be interesting for us. Down here. Okay, awesome. And this would be a simple Nikto scan. It gave us some information, mostly that many plugins are outdated. And if you want to combine Nikto scan with other options that Nikto offers us, feel free to use them. These other options are there in order to make a scan more precise. For example, if we run Nikto menu once again, we can see, let's say this option port defines which port we are scanning. By default, it's set to port 80, which is a default HTTP port. But remember that our Nmap scan gave us a result that there is HTTP servers running also on port 8081. Well, we can scan that as well with Nikto. All we have to do is type nikto-host and then the IP address of our target. And we can also add the -port option and specify which port we want to scan. Once we press enter, it will target that port and it will print us the information about that port only. And here is the result. It's much less information than with our previous scan, but we do got some things here as well. For example, this is the same as in the previous scan. We got that Jetty version appears to be outdated. We also got which allowed HTTP methods does it have. And we got some interesting directories, for example, /admin, /css, /admin.indexhtml. It tells us that it found an admin login page on this directory. Okay, awesome. We are done with website enumeration. All we are left to do now is to set up our Burp Suite tool, get introduced to its basics, and we're fully ready for discovering website vulnerabilities straight after that. See you in the next video.